excited for today's Spectrum of Topics podcast. I'm joined by Sarah Anderson. She's the president CEO of BOMA. Welcome.
Thank you.
Her and I met actually, what would that have been? Maybe a month or two ago. We had recently wrapped up a Cornet panel discussion where I moderated and Sarah um, had participated on that panel discussion with Bremer Bank and Larissa at CBRE. We just had such good feedback on that. So I'm like, Sarah, do you want to come and do a podcast? So maybe
That's good. You don't always get that kind of feedback, so that's a relief actually.
I know. And I was like, then we can really talk more about it and kind of dive into it. So that's really what the conversation is today. But before we kind of dive into some of the questions that I have, maybe you can give us an overview of you, your role, a little bit more about the BOMA organization.
Yeah, so I joined BOMA in 2021, and it's been a fantastic experience ever since. If you're not familiar with BOMA, it stands for Building Owners and Managers Association of Greater Minneapolis. Our organization has been around since 1902, if I remember correctly. So really a long time. And we're actually the second oldest BOMA in the country, and we are the sixth largest, which when you consider other markets, that's pretty incredible. But BOMA is an international organization. It's commercial real estate focused of professionals up and down the industry. And so it's just really exciting to be part of them and help them have a voice.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I know this chapter is very active here in the Minneapolis, like
Yeah.
BOMA. So yeah, it's fantastic to see and follow you guys on LinkedIn and that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to add anything around just specifically as it relates to your role within BOMA, or we can kind of
Sure.
take questions.
Yeah. So as the president CEO, I'm responsible for making sure that we have good educational content for our members. We have several different committees that deal with education, whether it's just general education sessions, to ones that are focused on energy and environment, on industrial property management, to medical building office management. We pretty much run the gamut. And we want to just make sure that our members, a lot of them do need continuing education credit.
Yep.
So we want to make sure that they are able to have good sessions to attend that can help them in their educational goals and their professional development. So yeah, we do that. And we also have a government affairs committee that deals with issues. And so I spend a lot of time on those issues, which I think we're going to cover off on today.
We will definitely be diving into that topic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. So let's kind of jump right in. So as I had said, Sarah participated on the Cornet panel, and so we're really going to be talking a lot about downtown Minneapolis. People want to know, what does the future look like? What are some initiatives that you're seeing? So maybe more specifically, what are some initiatives that you can share that your organization is seeing with building owners as it relates to downtown Minneapolis?
Yeah, so a couple of different things. My members are really in tune with what's happening from current events. So obviously, when the Big Ten was here, Katie Clark in town, all these different basketball players and fans coming in, folks had all kinds of events. You could have been shooting hoops in City Center, the whole 9 yards. We've got the gymnastics coming up in June. I'll be curious if we're going to see some balance beams. I'm a little worried about that. But for those that are brave, they probably will get a chance to try that out. But then, when we had Beyonce in town and Taylor Swift, everybody gets into the swing of things, and which is great. We want to show that activation and those kind of events, experiences, if you will.
Yeah.
We did something similar. We partnered with the Downtown Council this winter to do the holiday themed. I don't know if you saw those decals in the skyways and
Uh,
saw the window activations on the street level and skyway level. So that
those
was
are
all in partnership.
fantastic.
Yeah, it was great. So
That was
lots of things going on.
That's awesome. That's great. Yeah, it's so fun to see those kind of come back too. And I know like Basilica is coming back, and that's a huge
Yeah,
we're on people's radar, and a
yeah,
lot of buzz and excitement as it relates to kind of, bringing some activity back to downtown, so it's always great to see those things.
yeah.
Maybe let's kind of shift gears and talk, um, there's always conversation around the importance of public and private partnerships and what that means in supporting and strengthening the commitment to Minneapolis. Are you able to provide us an example of this?
Oh, definitely. In fact, just yesterday I was sitting in on a meeting with Meet Minneapolis, and we were going over their vision planning process. And it was great to hear the feedback from all of these different interested parties in the health and welfare of downtown Minneapolis and the ideas that they had. I also participate in the Renaissance Group, which is a collection of commercial real estate professionals that are eager to make sure that the downtown area succeeds. Of course, Downtown Council, Minneapolis Regional Chamber of Commerce. There's just a whole host of people that are all rowing the boat in the same direction, which is great.
Yeah, that's fantastic to hear and see um and kind of be a part of all of those things. Um so there's been discussions for quite a while around making Minneapolis a destination, kind of like the city of Milwaukee, really. It's an emphasis on being hospitality focused. Who do you believe is going to be the change maker for Minneapolis?
Oh, well, I'll tell you, it's all of those different groups that I just mentioned. So one of the things that we talked about yesterday with Meet Minneapolis is Nicollet Mall and seeing some activation there as far as do we close that off and add the twinkling lights, have those little bistro cafes on the sidewalk and just kind of that vibe and feel. So I think there's just a lot of opportunities there. Others talked about the river as using that as an asset and not an ignored
Yeah,
resource as it kind of is, and
yeah,
just making sure that people can see the joy and the beauty of being downtown. And so there's all of these different groups that are looking at different things. I know the Renaissance Group, one of the things that they've been looking at is getting a conversion tax credit on the state level for converting space from office to residential in the warehouse district in particular.
okay.
And so just so many different opportunities for us to see some great activation downtown. So when people come downtown for work, they're going to have plenty to do. So
Yeah, that's fantastic. Remind me again, was it the Renaissance group that that you're a part of had put a 5-year plan together, or was that something that
that,
the, okay,
yeah, no, that's the downtown council, their vision
okay,
planning, and that should be coming out here soon. That's been a couple of months in the making,
okay,
getting feedback from folks in the downtown area. What's really exciting about that one too is they've talked about the Nicollet Mall piece. They've also discussed kind of the wayfinding and some of the kiosks
yep,
piece too, which is so key. So I'm kind of
yep.
excited to see what comes of that and how we can move forward, I guess. So.
Yeah, and kind of to hop onto that point around wayfinding, maybe share a little bit about what you've heard from your members and your organization's perspective, how, technology and innovation can really be utilized to kind of enhance that experience. So once we do have the workers, the visitors coming for a Big Ten and gymnastics, how can we make that a better experience for them?
Yeah, I think they've been toying with the idea of having an app that, everybody, of course, has their cell phones with them now. And wouldn't it be great that you would have an application that was current and up to date and could tell you these are all the places that you're going to want to eat at, what their hours of operation are, all of those kind of details that you need to have a successful experience downtown,
Yeah.
even to the point of, as these buildings have activations for their tenants, here's what's going on in this building today, so you'd be able to check it out.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that's fantastic. So some of these things that you're talking about are ideas. Are they just ideas at this point? So for instance, kind of enhancing that experience for visitors and downtown workers, this app you're talking about, is it something that's still in conception and, needs a bit of a runway to roll out, or, is that going to be rolling out here shortly?
That's a really good question. I mean, one of the questions that we discussed yesterday is what's achievable within an 18-month period. And
Okay.
so, the app was one that rose to the top of the heap, if you will. I think there's a lot that we can do in removing some barriers for the Nicollet Mall project to happen. And it's that comes down to policymakers, right? But then there's also just the small one-off deals. So if we've got a restaurant, so for example, I had a situation where one of my members had a restaurant that was trying to get their liquor license back. They had had it previously, then pandemic shut down their business and they were returning, which is great.
Yeah.
And working with city council members to make sure that they had access to that in a very timely fashion helps us to get things turned around faster than you maybe normally would. Something that maybe took 6 months or a year or better, trying to kind of shorten that time frame so that we can get up and running. So,
Yeah, they're responsive to that, would you say?
yeah, they've been good. It's been helpful to work with our city officials and agency personnel to get those things
Yeah,
done.
and then the importance too, like we talked about it at the meeting, is um having those conversations because it is so urgent. Like I loved one of the things that you had discussed at the Cornet meeting is just, each of us can take action, and I'm sure we talk about that too on here. We can get into that later, but getting in front of your policymakers, getting all of those kind of conversations, maybe expand a little bit on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we all take for granted that somebody's going to do that. Somebody's going to say something to those
Yeah,
policymakers. But
yeah,
that somebody is you. Each individual has a role to play in voicing the concerns or the voicing the opportunities that we have to really activate downtown. And really, all it takes is one simple email. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. And literally, that's all you have to do. And think about how many emails you do in a day. And if you just
exactly.
did this one email that would take you maybe 5 minutes to do, it would have impact more than you can imagine.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Oh, that was awesome. And I think that really resonated with people at that point. It especially resonated with me. It's like, okay, we're having these conversations trying to highlight some of the positives that we're seeing as it relates to downtown and all of that, but what's some action that we can do, right?
yep,
I think
yep.
that's super important.
And you can do it from your desk.
Exactly. Exactly. So this has been a hot topic in headlines.
Mm.
Um, maybe share a little bit your perspective, from your members of your organization, kind of what's the importance of having a rideshare service to the city of Minneapolis?
Huge. I mean, think about it.
I
Anytime
know.
that you've traveled for work, what is your mode of transportation, right? You're going to take that ride share, and it might be a mix of different um, modes of transportation. A ride share here, maybe the train somewhere or a bus, but they are all connected and they're all very important to a vibrant community. And so I'm really hopeful that as policymakers look at this issue, that they consider the impact that it would have from an economic standpoint, and then also just as a service to individuals that don't have access to their own personal vehicle. We need to have this resolved and
Yeah.
soon.
And
So,
when you and I were talking, I think there was discussions that there are some policymakers that are trying to put forward either what would be the word? Um, an addition or a correction somewhat to
yeah, yeah,
the
some compromise. I think,
yeah,
I think after the initial, the initial fight, if you will, had kind of settled down a little bit and people were able to reflect. I
yeah,
think now that they've gotten feedback, that's where that feedback comes in, right?
yep,
They
yep.
heard from their constituents and said, okay, well, maybe there's a different way to address some of these issues without throwing the baby out with the bathwater. So, yeah, so hopefully we'll get
Ho-
that resolved.
Hopefully that'll get resolved.
Yes,
Because me personally, I'm like, okay, what am I gonna do without an Uber Lyft? Like I utilize it a lot out in the suburbs for myself. So
absolutely. Yeah.
Um, uh, this next question is kind of interesting. So the widely shared sentiment in Minnesota real estate is that companies kind of committing to downtown leases are largely taking up Class A, right? There's all this talk and buzzword around flight to quality, which we see that happening, right? But what can building owners and operators of Class B and C buildings do to attract businesses in a slower market?
Oh, well, it comes down to service, right? You don't have to be the shiniest or the fanciest, but service matters. When that tenant calls you up and says, "Hey, I need this," if you're Johnny on the spot, that pays dividends that more
Yep.
than you can imagine, right?
Yeah,
Um, I
that's
think about some of the places I've been loyal to
yep.
that, I'm like, yeah, if the service is there, I'm gonna come back time and again.
For
So,
sure, for sure. And even from our business, as we're in the design and construction, we really pride ourselves on being very client centric, and what that means, um, is being responsive, right? And I
yep.
think that that is definitely, you're seeing those businesses that are, um, taking pride in that. You're
Mm,
seeing that happen. And I thought it was really interesting too. You talked in our panel is just that can make a Class B building, right? Experience, or C building, way better, right?
yep.
So
Absolutely. Yep.
yeah. So we kind of talked about one action, right? So you can write your policy makers, legislation, but what's another kind of takeaway or action that viewers of the podcast can do to kind of positively impact downtown Minneapolis's perception?
So many things. It could be talking to your neighbors. It could be taking your friends and family out to restaurants, going to events, posting it on social media. Hey, look at where I am today. All of those things just make such a huge impact because, especially when it comes from you as individuals, right? Because it's not your company saying it, it's you personally saying it. And what a small thing to do. Again, it takes you all of that takes you even less time, like 2
Yeah.
minutes, okay? Snap the shot. Maybe if you wanna fluff it up and make yourself look better, that might take a little bit more time, but really, honestly, this is not hard.
Yeah, oh, that's good advice. I should probably do that more. So when I go downtown to visit, there is something really cool about being downtown and visiting businesses and all of that. It's just something that's still great. So it's great to hear all these initiatives, these plans, really people like yourself and your organization really kind of digging in and saying, okay, what can we do to kind of help make a difference? And I
Mm,
absolutely love your point around each of us writing our policymakers to try to help get things going even more, right? We all have, I think, a responsibility, if you have any sort of affiliation with this industry, to kind of help be the change, right?
yep, exactly, yep. Don't just sit.
Exactly. Exactly. Like
Oh,
be the change you want to see. So
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time. Again, I wanted to, we had such a good, robust conversation at the Coronet meeting that I wanted to take it one step further and really highlight our conversations for those that weren't there or members. So hopefully, they get a sense of some of the impacts and things that your organization is doing to help support downtown Minneapolis.
Yeah, well, good. Awesome. Great to hear.
Yeah, thank you.